So with great pleasure, I want to introduce actually four people who've gone through the experience of paired donation, which I think you guys had a lot of questions about. And I wanted to explain, so if Mr. McKnight and Mr. and Mrs. Barney and Zavaya, you want to come up front? So I wanted to give a little story, a little bit of a background for them when they came into our system. So here they are. They both had a pair. They both had someone who, one had someone who wanted to donate. It's kind of a unique case. And then we had, all right. Someone came in with a donor pair that was not compatible with them. And then we had an individual who wasn't able to make it today, but he just wanted to do something good. He didn't have somebody that he wanted to donate to specifically. He just wanted to, he knew this was the right thing to do for him. We call those types of donors altruistic donors. So when he came through the system, Ernest was already in Mayo trying to figure out how he was going to get a blood type incompatible transplant when we were looking at Mr. Barney and saying, oh my gosh, this is the perfect swap. We can flip-flop. And our altruistic donor can result in 2 transplants for these 2 amazing individuals. So that's how that's worked. It's been an amazing journey, I think, for all of you in this process. So they're here today to not only talk about what their experience was, but how was life on dialysis? How was life waiting for transplant, and kind of what they've gone through, if you guys want to take over.
I think you ended by saying what was life like on dialysis, so I'll start there.
Check, check.
First, I'd like to say thank you all for being here, definitely. I feel honored that my story will somehow touch you, guys, to let you know if you're nurses, doctors, whomever might be in the room, keep doing what you're doing. I applaud you for the help that you deliver as a first responder in my life. I say it that way because there was a specific nurse that assisted me while I was in Tarrant County. Her name is Miss Virginia. The Bible talks about Christ being the paraclete that comes alongside you and walks and holds your hand and takes care of you. That's exactly how she was in my life. Through prayer about what's going on, how am I going to go through this? And yes, it's a family thing, but it's also an individual thing. And as an individual thing, I can speak to that simply by saying, Miss Virginia was an answered prayer. She came through everything. And I know you guys, I'm assuming, you guys really are not supposed to share your faith with your clients and stuff like that. But along the way, she opened the door because she recognized that I had faith. So every day when I would come, she would allow me to share my faith about how strong God has been in my life, because I'm trying to work my mind going through this dialysis thing. I've gone through dialysis as well as the peritoneal dialysis while I was at home. I try to make sure that my kids, I have a set of 4 twins, 4 children. I was really nervous in the beginning because I did not want the kids to touch the machine. So if any of you all have ever seen the machine, you know it's a lot of little buttons and things like that on there. So I didn't want them to touch it and make a mistake and push something wrong, and while dad is not paying attention and something go wrong. So what I did is I allowed them into the room. Put your mask on. I want you to see me doing this. I don't want you to be scared of the machine. I want you to know that God's got me and dad's going to be okay. So I allowed them to watch that. But while I was there in Mansfield on dialysis, the hemodialysis, that was the scariest portion of it. Nurse is great, trust me. Going there, being there on my Thursday, Wednesday, Saturday, I believe it was. That was a traumatic piece. I don't look that old. Even though I have the gray beard, I don't feel that old. Unfortunately, I didn't look like the normal person that was there in that room as I'm looking around every day. I would tell myself, I'm not supposed to be here. This is not my life. I'm not supposed to be here. That's nothing against them, but I'm talking about how my experience had to be strengthened. The first day that I went, they said, we're looking for Mr. Barney. And I stood up. Mr. Barney, and they're looking around me. Again, because I didn't look like I was supposed to be there, and I wasn't supposed to be there. I get to the door and say, yeah, I'm Mr. Barney. Oh, wow, you're not what we expected. Well, come on in. This is how it'll be every single day. When we come in, you're going to set your things down, go over here and stand on the scale. We're going to weigh you, and then we're going to take you to the chair, and we're going to sit you down in the chair. And I'm looking around the room at all the different people and hearing the machines going. You know, so obviously someone knows. That machine, seeing that machine, thinking to myself, I'm going to have to be hooked up to the machine. And learning that it was okay for the moment, because I've been praying, God, help me, help me, help me, help me, help me. And a friend of mine who's currently going through a situation himself with stomach cancer, he's beating it. Great. We sat down. I was like, man, I just don't understand, man. I've been praying, asking God to help me. He said, man, what's wrong with you? Shut up. I was like, what? What are you talking about? I've been asking for this gift. He says, but you already got it. If you didn't have it, you'd be dead. I was like, wow. So I had to step back for a moment and recognize, wow, God answers in so many different ways. And I didn't recognize that the machine was an answer until Ernie's wife came along. That was blowing my mind. From that moment, it seemed like everything just sped up so fast. Went to the doctor to do my checkup. My wife was there. We came back. She called us back and said, hey, come back Friday. I've got some information for you. We came back Friday, and she says, are you ready? Ready for what? There's a paired donation that you can get a kidney. Are you serious? So I went through my moment. She's like, what is that? What are you doing? I said, that was just me hyperventilating just for a moment so I can get it out of the way. I'm for real. So after that, they said it's going to be in January the 8th, 2018. What? Are you serious? But it it was like 8 years that I had gone through this process. And then to get here and it to be real blew my mind. There were some misdiagnoses along the way. They initially thought it was some blood clots in my leg, so I've gone to a vascular doctor. They checked, nothing. Came back, they checked again, nothing. It's like, okay, well, what's going on? And they didn't know. They didn't understand what was going on. I didn't know. Loss of jobs through this whole midst of this time. So it was added pressure. Had lost the job. I'll give you this little note. I had lost the job. I would get dressed, put out the resumes and things of that nature going around, and it would be difficult sometimes for me to come back home. As a man, at this time, my wife, she was babysitting, so we're living off her babysitting that she's doing. As a man, that's hard. Very difficult. So I'm trying to build myself up, but I'm driving around, going past the house, go down the street one more time. Let's get your mind together. Let's get your mind together. Because now I got to come back in the house, face my family and stuff. It's like, okay, not this time. I didn't get it. All right. But let's try again. Key thing in that, let's try again. Let's try again. Let's try again. And that's what happened, like I said, when Ernie's wife decided to say, hey, I love you enough, let me give you a kidney. It didn't necessarily work out for that way, but it worked out for me. Thank you.
Concur. Without a doubt. Without a doubt. So as Chris was telling his story and his journey, it reminds me of when my journey started, which was in 2009. 2 months after my daughter was born in April of 2009, I was diagnosed with renal cell carcinoma. So kidney was removed, cancer was contained. Doctor came in a few days later and he said, I get to tell you something. I'm like, what's that? He said, you're cancer free. I'm like, well, I better be. You just removed a kidney out of my body. What's wrong with you? And he said, "You don't understand what I'm saying." He said, "We did a biopsy on the kidney and the cancer was contained, so you don't have to go through chemo or radiation." I said, "God used you to remove it, my primary care to find it, so I could watch my daughter grow up." So fast forward 7 years, 8 years later, I'm diagnosed with end-stage renal failure. So that was 2016. And in that process, you try to go through the listing process. You have to have a GFR of below 19 to get on the list or before they start the workup. And I was at 20 in 2016, so I had to wait till 2015 I was at 20, and so my GFR picked back up to 21, so I had to wait a year before it dropped down to 19. And so went through that listing process, went through the evaluation process, and during that process, they're getting me ready for dialysis. Had been fitted with a fistula, got a fistula in 17, the summer of 17, and my wife was going through the process to being, we knew she wasn't a blood type, but we were gonna get on a paired donation list. And as she's going through that process, we're exploring other options, like Laura had said, because I am one of those, I'm in construction, I'm a project manager, so this is a project for me. So how do I get past this point in my life? How do I get healing? And for me, the options are, in any renal patient, their options are transplant, dialysis, or ultimate healing, right? Because there's not any drugs or that can help you out. So we were looking at an AB transplant through the Mayo Clinic, and we had gotten approved for that on a trip that we were on. On a Wednesday, my daughter prayed on Thursday, "God, please heal my daddy." And on Friday, we got a phone call from UT Southwestern, and they said, "Don't go to Mayo. If your wife is still interested in donating her kidney, we'll pick a recipient. We have a blood match donor for you." And as a B positive recipient, there's less than 15% of the population that have my blood type. And if you look at the numbers that are on the wait list of over 100,000, less than 2% of those 100,000 get transplanted every year that are B kidneys. So at the end of the day, it was truly an answered prayer. And, with my, life today for us as a family is remarkable. I can tell you that the day of transplant for me, my GFR was 4, my creatinine level was 12.5, and all you know those numbers, I'm sure, but the miracle was I had not had to start dialysis yet. So I was a preemptive transplant, and that's a miracle in itself to be able to be at that point. But my nephrologist, I don't know if anybody knows Dr. Biederman, but he's pretty, but his goal was, if you're laughing because he's a great nephrologist, but at the end of the day, his goal was to get me to transplant pre-dialysis. So, load up because my blood pressure was skyrocketing, and he was giving me that recovery pill that you give high blood pressure patients, when you go to the ER. It starts with a C. Huh? Yes, I was taking 3 of those a day just to get to transplant. But, the pain and the effort, look at the result, I get to run and play with my daughter today, who's currently 10. I've got a new family with Chris and his family and Rochelle, and it's just, I can tell you that I get to share that gift. I try to share my story on a daily basis on Living Donation, because I had Edgar Vasquez, who was my donor, my altruistic donor, who is a random stranger, at the age of 26 when he donated, that right there is a miracle. For a college student at University of North Texas to decide that he wanted to give a kidney because his cousin was given a kidney. And when I asked him the question, what motivated you? And he said it felt a tug at his heart. And I said, not only did you hear the call, but you answered it. So as a believer, you know, God is truly, he is the answer, right? And he uses all of you as tools to help people like us. And I am thankful every day. You know, I'm thankful for the transplant team, Dr. Vinky, and all the people at the transplant team have been just instrumental in, I know, my recovery, and their availability and their just commitment to our well-being. And I think from the numbers that I see, you know, last year, 21,000 transplants nationwide, 21 something. This year, probably on track for 24,000 nationwide. I don't know the number difference from living donation, but I try to continue that conversation of living donation. You know, I've even put up a website, shareyoursparekidney.com, and with resources on there for other living donors that would consider giving a kidney. Here's other people that have had those experiences. Here are other stories of living donors. And if the education was there that the living donor would live a healthy life, then that 23% that we may hit this year, or 24%, may go to 50 or 70%. You know, if there was as much emphasis on living donation as there were on dialysis, I think that, you know, I'm probably preaching to the choir here, but, you know, I really appreciate all your hard work and appreciate the opportunity to share my story and share what God's done in my life, without a doubt, and what you guys have done for me.
I just want to say real quick, as a wife of, or as a caregiver, thank you to all you nurses and doctors who give your time tremendously. Because if it weren't for you guys, because the spouse can't go into the dialysis room with, you know, with the person that's on the dialysis, but just to know that there's somebody there who really, really has a heart for what they're doing and who cares about their patients. Just again, I just want to say thank you. And it is a tremendous blessing to have Ernie and his wife Lisa and their daughter. Actually, we have twins. This is one of the twins, but our kids are the same age and maybe like a few months apart. I think her birthday's in April. Our twins' birthday's in January. They'll be 10 or 11, and she'll be 11 in April. But it's just amazing of how that we've all come together and how we're just like one big happy family. Even on the day of transplant, we weren't supposed to know, but it just happened that we figured it out. I was really trying not to, but that's me. I'm like an investigative person. I try to figure everything out. Really wasn't trying to, so I'm trying to mind my own business, and his wife is sitting there, and she's like, "Are you getting a kidney today?" And I'm like, "But my husband is." But he fell asleep. And so he was sleeping, and I was like, "No, my husband is." And she was like, "Oh, well, I think I'm his donor." And I'm like, "Really?" And I'm like, "Really?" And I was like, and she's like, "Yeah," which I kind of figured out because when they called Ernie back and he was like, "Which one do you want?" So I kind of figured it out, but I was still trying to play it, you know, quietly. And then once we started talking, because her mom, I think her dad was there and her mom was there. And then like through the whole transplant, I mean, we just began to start talking, checking on each other. And we couldn't keep Ernie out of Chris's room because the doctors came in and they're like, "Y'all know each other?" I'm like, "Oh my God." But Yeah, you're not supposed to, what are you doing? But it was just an amazing, amazing process through the beginning. But again, I just want to say thank you to all you nurses, the doctors, tremendously from the bottom of our hearts. Just thank you for your hard work and for the things that you guys do for us.
Thank you all for sharing your story.